this webinar. And all right, so then let me walk you shortly through the agenda that we have for today's webinar. So we will be introducing International Water Association as well as the YWP Nepal chapter of IWA. We'll have a short interactive Mentimeter session and followed by a keynote presentation from Tenzing Chogyal Sherpa himself. And then we'll go through Q&A and discussion and some closing remarks. So now let me show you just a snapshot of who registered for this webinar. So we had 49 registration till yesterday, and almost 95% of those are early career, mostly focusing on research and graduate students. And based on their interest, they are here to learn about climate change impacts, hydrology, stream flow, water security, and naturally glacier science, which is the central to our webinar today. So with that, let me introduce a poll quickly, a poll with our participants. So maybe I would like to request our participants take a minute here to answer this poll, maybe in 30 seconds, and then we'll see the result. I don't understand. We just have only 2 responses. I don't know why this.
Sorry, I think there is some issue with my connection because I can't see chat and maybe.
Okay. Can you see it now?
No, I can't see it on my laptop. I think I need to rejoin.
Sure. Please feel free to rejoin because I can see a lot of people have responded now. All right, let me end the poll here because we are kind of a little bit delayed by a few minutes. So I can share my screen. So almost 75% has participated in this poll. Thank you very much. And I can see that majority of them are not a member of IWA or of young water professionals. With some are involved with us, but more detail on who we are, what is IWA, YWP Nepal, and the young professional chapter itself. I would like to call upon our chair, Roshan Paudel, if he could introduce the YWP Nepal and the IWA.
Thank you, Kaushal. I would like to welcome you all on this webinar, and I would like to also welcome our speaker, Tenzing sir, for accepting our invitation and giving his valuable time in this knowledge sharing session. First of all, I would like to go through what is IWA and what is IWA YWP, what's our mission and what activities that we do. This sort of things I will cover in the presentations. So talking about IWA means International Water Association, which works for conducting programs for wisely and sustainably managing the water resource. I think you've heard of the International Water Association as an organization. So IWA YWP is the YWP means Young Water Professionals. So it's a sub chapter of the International Water Associations. So this program which we are conducting today is being conducted by our team from IWA Young Water Professionals of the Nepal chapter. So there are other country chapters as well, like Nepal of the YWP. Next slide, please. Sabi, next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, so talking about our YWP organizing, our founding members. So Dr. Anis Kimiri was the founding member chair, and there were other members, which was established in 2020. So next slide, please. Sabi, next slide, please. So these are our current steering committee members. So Kaushalji is our vice chair, which is also hosting the seminar, this webinar, and we have Sabi as a secretary, and we have, even though I think all the members could not join today, but we have Niveshji, who is working in Germany, Sambuddha, Sarana, and other team members in our IWA YWP Nepal chapter current committee. And talking about the members, we have around 367 members of the YWP community. So to be a member, just for the criteria to be the members, you just need to be below 35 years, and it's free of cost. So somebody might be thinking, how can we be the members of YWP Nepal? So just to be the member, you don't need to pay anything. It's free of cost. You just we will share the forms or QRs on your charts, so that if you are interested, you can also be a member of YWP Nepal. So the benefits of the being in the YWP IWA YWP Nepal chapter would be like you will get regular emails like the current program that webinar we are hosting, or also we are planning to support students or the young people in their research. That is in our future plans. So you get to know about the programs like the current ones, with the webinars that can be capacity building programs, and also whatever events we will be planning, you will get that through the email if you are a registered YWP member. Yeah, I think that is the short introduction of IWA YWP Nepal. Thank you for Kaushal and Tenzing ji again for organizing and accepting our event.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Roshanji, for that short and sweet introduction to IWA YWP Nepal, as well as the International Water Association itself. Maybe if you are interested, to those who are not part of YWP Nepal, who holds Nepalese nationality, please feel free to connect yourself through any of the QR code that is being shared at the moment. Now, with that, let me share. Let's go to an interactive session now, to a Mentimeter session, and where you can all participate, and we'll have a little bit of engagement exercise as well as some fun. So I would like to request our participants, maybe if you can go to menti.com and use the code 53898429, and then give a thumbs up once you're in, so that we know how many of you have already joined. Let me share the code here. Maybe even our co-host and others, if even Tenzing Dai, if you want to, then you can also participate in this. I myself am also joining. So I see already 2 people have joined. Yeah, the number is increasing now. We will wait for just a little bit of time. Okay, is there, yeah, perfect. We are getting some active participants, but we have 27 participants in the chat. Maybe some more if they could join. All right, let's go ahead because we are running behind time already. Let's start with the first question. So, how are you guys feeling at the moment? I see somebody has responded hot as well. Yes, we were discussing just a little bit before. It's even in Europe, it's almost about temperature are expected to be more than 40 degree this weekend. So it's quite hot here as well. It's good to know that majority of our participants they are feeling excited and curious about this webinar. That's good to know. Let's move to another questions. So which of the following describe your current affiliation? Um, yeah, I know that most of the participant who registered with us has already answered this question, but there are participants who did not fill out the registration form but are joining today. So maybe we want to put those record number as well here. So please feel free to answer this as well. Perfect. So I see that majority of our participants are reflecting on academia and research, and that's increasing. But then we also have from NGOs and even private sector, which is good to know. And we have also from government and public. We have students as well. So wonderful, wonderful to know we have somewhat a good mix. But as the initial registration reflected, we have mostly early career professionals who are involved in academia and research. So now let's move to a little bit more fun one. So in one word, what comes to your mind when you think of glacier? I see a big climate change coming up. Definitely. We are here to discuss on that. Snow. Yes, someone also wrote glacier lake outburst, flooding, and yes, receding. Wonderful, wonderful. Large ice mass moving. Yeah, these are very insightful responses that we're receiving. All right, so let's move to one last question. So, how would you rate your awareness of the Hindu Kush Himalaya third pole and its role in regional water security? All right, perfect. So we have like a kind of a balance between very aware as well as this is new to me. So this is like a very good mix. I think this could be something that is very helpful to our speaker as well. Uh, all right, so that's like the end of my presentation on Mentimeter. Hope that was engaging and fun as it was to me, to you guys as well. Now, let me continue on that last Mentimeter question about the awareness. So two figures here I would like to mention here is that, there are 2 billion people that rely on the rivers that are fed by the Hindu Kush Himalaya snow and glaciers. And then a more concerning figure is that, up to 80% of this Hindu Kush Himalaya glacier volume that could be gone by the next century. So now imagine the implication that would have, and we will dive deeper into that. So with that, let me introduce our speaker of the day. Mr. Tenzing Chogyal Sherpa. I've known Tenzing Dai since our bachelor's days at Kathmandu University, and I have like closely followed his dedication to understanding the cryosphere and the communities downstream who depend on it. He himself is born in Namche Bazar from the ethnic Sherpa community. He's the grandson of Kansa Sherpa, who was one of the last surviving members of the first Everest climate expedition with Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norway. Sadly, he passed away last October. Uh, but to know that mountains are in his blood, that's like literally in his blood. And nearly about 8 years he has worked with ICIMOD, and his work has spanned from glacier research, glacier lake, and major Himalaya expeditions, and the impact of climate change on these. He has actively worked on those. So with that, it's my pleasure to welcome Tenzing Dai, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Kaushal, and everyone present today. And thank you very much, Young Waters Professional Nepal, for having me here and inviting me for this presentation. And I'm also very interested and was very excited to hear all of the Mentimeter sessions. I think that was very helpful for me as well. Albeit I also participated, so maybe some of it I also voted for, but still quite a nice and interactive session. Let me just try to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Can you see the full slide?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And so thank you, Kaushal. So I had some introduction on my slide, so I think you already did most of that part, so maybe I'll not go more into it. So I'll go quickly because I don't want to take much time. So I'll not go more into my introduction, but yeah, so this is my hometown, Namche Bazar. That's about 3,500 meters above sea level. I don't know if many people have been there, but if you do come, then please do contact me, right? And so it'll be very nice to have you up there. And the second part I want to show is that this picture is I think it's one of the most famous pictures in case of mountaineering, because this is the first group photo taken before the first ascent of Mount Everest. And on the backside you can see Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Chogyal Sherpa, and they are well-known figures, right? But within that is two people that are very close to me, and which is also mentioned in Kaushal's introduction as well, is my late grandfather and my late great-grandfather. And so why I bring them up is because today, like, people ask me, why are you studying glaciers? Why do you walk 2-3 weeks up to the mountains, stay there for 2-3 weeks in brutal cold and snow deep sessions? But the reason is because I think in a way I was brought up with these kind of stories. You have this relationship with grandfather and grandson, and both of my grandfather always used to tell stories about going to these big ice fields, going to these big mountains, and going to these side of, like, they used to go to Tibet. So there was this big glacier. So I always used to hear about that. So in that way, it sort of always, put that sort of seed in my thought. And in a way, subconsciously, I was always interested in ice. And I think now I have that opportunity to start a study. And I sort of now come from this long line of people that have been climbing mountains now to actually studying them. So that's just a bit of an introduction of why I do this, and so that it gives a more personalized view of how I came into glaciology. And if you look at the Sherpa people, we have been well known and we are synonymously used as mountaineers, but we are also an ethnic group that live in the mountains. And most people are Nepalese here, so I will not have to reiterate that. But these are some very nice pictures from the Everest region, from very old pictures. And if you look at the lowest one, those are people who walked for 2-3 days, ran over just to make the Lukla airstrip, which is now known as the most dangerous airstrip apparently in the world. So anyway, that's just showing how things started and how the Khumbu region sort of became connected. And I feel fortunate enough that I come from those roots and I come here and I'm here in Europe, and actually being an academic, that is was quite impossible in the day. And so this is just a brief overview of the work that I've done, and Kaushal already sort of covered most of it. So enough about me. I'll go into what we're here today. So I'll talk about cryosphere. I think most people have already heard about cryosphere, so I'll just go a little bit. Cryosphere here, cryo meaning frozen. And so in this case, we refer to water in its frozen form that's found all in the world. So in that way, we say cryosphere. If you talk about cryosphere, so these are the main components: snow, glacier, permafrost, any ice that you find over lake, river, or sea, and the big ice sheets that everyone know about. But in case of the high mountain Asia, or in case of Nepal Himalayas, these are the three more important ones, because these are the more prominent components that we find, that are glaciers, snow, and permafrost. But the question is, why study that? Where do you find that? So you've got all these sort of questions. So I'll go more into that. So if you look at how and the what of cryosphere, why do we study it? What it is basically ice, right? It should do something with ice, because that's what we talk about. But in this picture, I show you two pictures. On the left is an ice cube that you find in your refrigerator. On the right is a depiction of a glacier ice. They should be the same, right? There shouldn't be much difference. But in reality, there's quite a lot of difference, because the left side, the ice that you find in a refrigerator, is just refrozen ice, refrozen water. But on the right side, glaciers that are formed is mostly primarily formed from snow. So layering and slowly layering and densifying amount of snow. And that is why people study glaciers, because they have this consistent layering. You can actually look into the past. It's sort of like getting the memory from the past. That is why people study an ice. So that is one of the core differences between understanding ice. And then to understand ice is also to understand its formation, and to understand ice is also to understand snow. So this is a very nice moving image of showing how a glacier is formed. You have snowfall that slowly starts to fall. It slowly compacts, densifies, it slowly pushes down, and then it slowly starts flowing. And that's how we sort of understand how a glacier ice is formed. And that is why snow is very important, because it becomes like the primary ingredient for a glacier. And so this is a very nice depiction of Khumbu icefall that is from Mount Everest. You can show. The reason I show this is because just because there is ice on top of a mountain doesn't mean it's a glacier. It needs to be a system that has to be moving. That is why we say a slowly moving mass or a river of ice, which is formed by the accumulation and the compaction of snow, and which is quite evident in this picture. And Khumbu icefall is also known to be one of the most dangerous points in the whole Everest region routes, which is quite obvious. And it's not an unnatural thing, because that's the natural process of a glacier moving. And if you look at this, this is a very nice depiction of how a glacier is formed, how a glacier reacts. Why we sort of correlate glaciers to climate is because glaciers are always in this balance between how much snowfall they receive and how much melting it experiences. So if you see this image, you can see that there is snow coming up from the on the top. It slowly densifies, it slowly starts to move down, and then it's pushed down towards the terminus. And there it starts to experience melting. So it's always in that balance. But what's happening is, if you have less snowfall, then you have negative negative loss in the mass, so the negative mass balance. If you have more snowfall, positive mass balance. If you have more melting, so it's basically a basic equation. But with climate change, what's happening right now is that we've got more and more melting, and we've got less and less snowfall, meaning this is like the worst case scenario for glaciers. And which is why, if you look at, in many cases, you see that glaciers receding quite far. And these are some examples from Switzerland, and these are some examples from Peru. But yeah, these are examples outside of Hindu Kush Himalaya. So what's happening in our region? So this is some vivid examples from Nepal. You can see how far the glaciers have receded. I'll not show you any graphs, or I'll not show you any plots. And that is the reason why we study glaciers. because if you want, they are one of the best scientific communicators of climate change. If you want to show increasing precipitation, if you want to show decreasing precipitation or increasing temperature, it's quite difficult to do that. You have to have some sort of long-term trend or some sort of data point. But with glacier, just these pictures are enough. That is also the reason why we study glaciers, and they are the most direct connecting point that we have to understanding and to communicating climate change. So I just show you pictures here just to show how the glaciers in the Nepal Himalayas are changing. No graph necessary. I think the message is quite clear. And if you look at this particular glacier in Italy, just within the COVID time, it sort of lost quite a lot of mass. So you can see how fast they've been retreating. So where do we find them is, I think most of you know, you've got the North Pole in the Arctic. Then you've got the South Pole, the big ice sheets in Antarctic. And then after that, the largest concentration of snow and ice you can find in this Hindu Kush Himalayan region. That is why we call it as the third pole. So if you look at the third pole, so this is most of the mountain ranges in the third pole. And within that, we have about more than 54,000 glaciers. And 54,000 glaciers is quite a big number, and that is also why we call it a third pole. But I go further deep down is that because they also provide water to one of the largest river systems in that particular region, and these are showing the contribution of glaciers snow to rivers. And if you look at, as you go eastern side, there is more rainfall contribution, of course, because there is less and less glaciers. As you go westwards, you can see more and more glacier contribution because you have more glacier, especially in the Karakoram regions. But what is also happening is that it's not so clear there. There is not much. If you look at a larger scale, yeah, there shouldn't be much contribution, and there doesn't look to be much contribution from snow and ice. But if you look at a more elevational scale, if you look at a more sub-basin scale, on a more macro level, you can see that as you go higher in elevation, the contribution of these snow and ice becomes much, much higher, and they become much, much important. And if you look at a seasonal perspective, it is during the dry seasons when we don't have monsoonal rainfall is when the contribution from snow and ice becomes super important. But the question about and the whole identity of Hindu Kush Himalaya is not about its glaciers. It's about the people, like Kaushal already said. We've got 24% of the people of the world living in that region. Just to give an idea what 24% means is, if you look at that image, you can see that it represents about 25% of the world. So the number of people that live in that orange section is as equal to the number of people that live in whole of North America, whole of South America, and half of Africa. So that just gives you an idea of the density and the amount of people that are already concentrated in this region. And so this is why we also give a different name to this particular region in Hindu Kush Himalayas. It's not just a third pole, it's a people pole. Because here, unlike the other regions in the North and the South Pole, you do not have that much interaction. People are not literally living in there. But here, in this case, people are literally living in such close vicinity to these cryospheric resources. So here I've established how, the why, the what, the where. But one of the major questions that every one of us as glaciologists get and everyone wants to know is when. When is that increase by its discharge? When is that flood going to outburst? When is snow come? When? Everything is when. But that is the question we have the most difficulty answering. I'll give you an example. If you look at these three sort of projections from very reputed scientists, from very reputed journals, they try to project how glaciers in the Everest region will lose their mass. Look at the range. It's 8 to 99%. 8 to 99%, if I say I'm 8 to 99% sure about something, then it's practically saying I am not sure. I don't know anything. And that's basically that. So if you look at this particular graph, I'll just focus a bit here. So if you look at the red dotted line, that is all of the glaciers in high mountain Asia. And if you look at the red solid line, that is all of the weather stations in high mountain Asia. So where we have the largest amount of ice is where we have close to nothing.
So if we don't know anything about anything, how can you say about, like, how can you sort of diagnose what's happening there, right? So it's sort of that conundrum, but we also in this very vicious loop that we don't know much about the glaciers, but we have to say a lot about it. But still, we're trying to understand it. But to try to understand it, we still need all of these data. So it's a very vicious feedback loop, and especially with elevation dependent warming, what's happening is that I think many of you might have heard about elevation dependent warming, but it's a phenomenon where as you go higher in elevation, you have this increase in temperature trend. But why it's important for glaciers is because if you again go back to this particular graph, so on the left side, you see all of the dotted lines. That is the glaciers in the rest of the world. If you look at the red dotted line, that is the glaciers in high mountain Asia. The high mountain Asia glaciers mostly start from 4,000 meters, meaning where these higher elevations are is already where we see this increasing trend of warming temperatures with elevation dependent warming, meaning the glaciers here are even more vulnerable to warming temperatures and the coming impacts of climate change. So, which is why we sort of need this culmination of these in situ observations because we also can't just go to all of these glaciers every time. It's quite impossible. So that is where we need remote sensing and modeling. So that is all of the techniques that have improved. The beauty about in situ observation, and it's also the difficult part, is also that it's difficult to get to, but we get very vital data. But sometimes what things happen is the more we start to know about these glaciers, the more we start to know what we don't know. That's what I like to say. Is that so? In case of this, it is the highest glaciers in the world, Khumbu Glacier. We put a thermistor chain within the glacier about 150 meters to understand how cold the glacier is. Surprisingly, it was much warmer than we thought. It's actually 2 degrees Celsius warmer than the mean annual air temperature. But keep in mind, the mean annual air temperature there is below zero, and there it is much warmer. So meaning how, like, for you, it's for most people, it's like, how is the ice warmer than the air? Right? So that is also quite a surprise to us, meaning that more we start to delve into it, more we start to know that there is still so much that is unknown. But that is the modeler in me talking, right? And so these are some of the other sort of field-based measurement methods that we do on a glacier. And so some of the examples, like in case of talking about numbers is one thing, but if you go to the field and actually see by yourself, then you sort of visualize what that means. So I give you an example. So this is a very one of the most foundational methods in glaciology. It's called the glaciological method using steam drill. We drill a stake into the ice and look at how much the stake is then exposed. Through that, we get how much the ice has thinned away. And based on that, so just within 1 year, we saw about 3 meters of ice melt. The 3 meters of ice melt sounds 3 meters doesn't sound much, but then if you visualize it, if you're in a room right now, it is as equivalent to the height of your room, right? So meaning that's quite a lot. And imagine that amount of chunk of ice, hundreds of kilometers, not hundreds, at least quite a lot of ice being melted away every year. So that just gives you a scale of how much ice melt is going on. So, like I said, we can't measure every glacier, so we have these remote sensing methods, and through that, we've got a very nice picture of what's going on. And even that picture is quite devastating. And all of that picture is saying that as we come towards these decades, is when the glaciers are starting to lose more and more mass, which is why the mass loss has increased even by 65%, which was also in Kaushal's introduction slide. And so this is a very nice, this is sort of a global estimate of what's going on all over the world. If you look at that, even that is not showing good news. That is showing that from 2000 to 2023, the glaciers over the world lost quite a lot of ice. I'm not going to the number, but why that number is important here is because now globally glaciers are losing much more mass than either the ice sheets. So usually it's the ice sheets, the big ice sheets that lose quite a mass. But now if you look at global mountain glaciers, now they're starting to lose more mass. There is still quite a debate in this within the scientific community about underestimation, but still this is quite stark, saying that mountain glaciers are already losing quite a lot of mass. But why am I talking about all these glaciers? Why does it matter, right? So why does it matter to you that live in Nepal or Asia or in Europe or anywhere? I think today I speak in front of a water community. Of course, the story is about water. It's either about too much water, it's either about too little water. And so I think in case of Nepal, I love going to too little water because it's about projections and it's quite clear as hydrological modelers. I think you already understand. But the more uh, sort of urgent and the more clear thing is too much water, where we have this direct impact with especially the formation of glacial lakes and the tendency of some of these glacial lakes to outburst, causing devastating glacial lake outburst floods. And I give you direct examples. I'll not give you sort of theoretical sort of how they could be. So because we directly have examples, one of those prime examples is the most recent flood 2 years ago in Thame, where half of the village was gone due to this sequence of glacial lake outburst flood. And then right after that, just the following year, we had another major glacial lake outburst flood in Rasua that also caused major damages to many, many hydropowers. The interesting thing about that particular event is that it was, if you look at this particular the glacier, you not see much, but the images that you see are not yearly scale or decadal scale, they are monthly scale. So meaning the lake that was on top of the glacier changed so fast and then it outbursted so fast. So things are happening so fast that it's sometimes difficult for us to comprehend these kind of things, but it's already happening so fast. So we have to react. So we have to adapt. So that is the answer here. And just within one day, so just within one day of that glove, we have another glove just within Nepal. For me, who've just studied about glacial lake outburst floods in literature, we hear about only in literature like happened 20 years, 30 years ago, but this is happening just within a span of one day. So this was, for me, it was unheard of and it was quite concerning as well. So you see another glacial lake outburst flood that happened in Mustang. And so as somebody who works on glaciers, so we do a lot of post-glacial lake outburst flood surveys. So this is one of the surveys that we did in the Thame region. We do a lot of drone surveys as well to understand. From that drone survey, I just give you an example of Thame. This is the before image. So you look at the old river path. It directly carved out through that path, and that's where you see most of the damage being taken place. And this is the current condition of Thame. Most of the land is now unsuitable for future use, at least land or agriculture or any sort of use. And this is, so it also had a major damage to the hydropower there. You see the surge pond, the intake was completely damaged. This is some direct images of the intake. You can see even from this, you can see the amount of energy that needed to sort of wipe out such a concrete-based intake. So this is the land currently in Thame. So I'll show you the video. It gives you direct okay, the video is not working, but there's a lot of tension cracks where the whole land is now cracking and it's becoming unstable. That whole region is not suitable to stay. And so these are supposed to be videos, but I think there was some issue with the link. But if you look at that picture, it looks like we're in a desert storm somewhere in the Middle East. But this is actually up just down from Thame, because these are all the sediments that the lake, when it outbursted, brought. And it sort of, there was some temporary ponding. So in that way, that particular region, which was used for farming and other reasons, is now full of sand and sediment. This is just an interesting sort of phenomenon that happened. It's not working. So let me. And so why I talk about Thame is also because it presents an interesting story. If you look at this valley, so in the middle is the Thame Valley, where we had that sequence of glacial lake outburst flood in 2024. And then if you look at on the left side, there is another glacial lake that had outbursted in 1985 that had also caused major damage. So in that case, here what we see is on the right side of the valley is the big glacial lake, which is a potentially dangerous glacial lake and is within the list of UNDP's identification list of potentially dangerous glacial lake that will be mitigated. And it's quite a big glacial lake that could outburst in the future. So now just within this valley, we have the past, the present, and the future. And in all of this, you can see, at least in the past, you've seen hydropower already damaged due to the Dixo outburst flood. And in the present, you also see that hydropower was damaged. And in the future, what could happen is also the question. And because that is quite a big glacial lake and it falls quite in the Dudh, there are already a lot of hydropowers applied, licensed, and under construction there. So the future already looks quite uncertain on that case. So another example is the Til flood event. There also you see a newly constructed hydropower was directly damaged. The whole village is now in turmoil. They might they don't have electricity, and it's quite a difficult time there. There we had a different kind of lake. It's sort of, it also is from cryosphere, but it's a thermokarst lake drainage. Thermokarst lake drainage usually happens. Thermokarst lake is sort of, it happens not due to glacier melt, but due to permafrost thaw. I'll not go more into this, but yeah, this is just some examples of an understanding of what permafrost is. I used to put this as a recent glacial lake outburst flood in the Aztecs, but now we've had so many glacial lake outburst floods just within the 2 years that these have become past glacial lake outburst flood. And all of these also had devastating damages all over the Hindu Kush Himalayas, and especially to hydropowers and to like, so this is a very good example of how these got to be very, very dangerous. You can see this debris, this debris was now. And the dangers about this debris flow is that because they are so viscous, they become quite thick, so the density increases and they can actually sort of carry these big boulders, which normal waters may not be able to in normal cases. So we mapped out and we looked at about 490 globs since 1800s, and forecasts say that, predictions say that they could increase by threefold, meaning the risk will increase much, much higher. And what that means is a loss of life, loss of land, loss of livelihood, and the loss of critical infrastructure like hydropowers. But at the end, it's also a very sad thing that it causes the loss of home, especially in case of Thame. Like people that have been calling that region home for generations have now lost all of that and all of that connection back to their ancestors. So what do we do? Like what next do we do? What do we have to do? So this is also what my grandfather used to tell. What solution there is? If this is, because most of this is driven from climate change, there is no direct solution, especially from a country like Nepal, where we had nothing much to do about these emissions. But we can't just stand there and see, right? We have to speak out. We have to. So the reason why I show this, the reason why I go to all of these reasons is also to show and to echo the voices of the mountains and to echo what's actually going on while people still debate if and when climate change is happening. Climate change in this region is already happening and is already causing a damage. But in case of solutions, people have come up with some very innovative solutions like the Ice Stupa project, which is sort of contextual and very case by case because it might not be applicable to all regions. So then we have adaptation and mitigation, right? That is one of the reasons. So in case of mitigation, I think that's very important. In case of Nepal, we will have a similar mitigation measures for glacial lake outburst flood in the coming years in several lakes of Nepal through UNDP and government of Nepal. But this is just an example of what happened in Imja. There was field-based investigations. There was a lot of research, and that sort of brought momentum, right? When you have proper information dissemination, when you have this sort of momentum with the scientific community, that creates space for funding, I think. And in case of Nepal, we do not have the right priority. We do not have the current financial resources or the human resources to try to fund these kind of large projects, right? So that is where these larger fundings comes, and that is how the project was funded. And what that did was also, in a way, I think, is that that gave sort of hope for the local people that it is not just stand by and watch and prepare for the worst. There is something you can do. There is something you can actually build. These are direct examples of people taking things into their own hands and starting to minimize the risk. And that is what we want to do. And as a local that live there, that is also what we wanted to do. So that is also why after the Thame flood, we didn't just stand by and stood by and watched. We also took initiative with the local community, with the local government, and started this Thame community-based early warning system. Because we do not, maybe not have that kind of money to do mitigation measures, but we can at least make our community safe. And these are some of the sensors we've sort of installed to measure the river. And it's an automated siren, which has a weather station, rivers, and it's all sort of fixed there. And it will give automated siren if there is any flood. And so, which has been super useful. And this has been implemented this year, and it will keep being, so we will finish this project by the end of this year. But the idea is that this becomes sustainable. It's just not that we build a station takeaway. So the whole reason we sort of did this is it started from local people. It included local NGO, it included local scientists, and it will be handed over and it will be sort of maintained through the local community. And that is the whole idea of doing community research, doing sort of community initiative, doing all of this research that it should be sustainable, that we have this sort of connecting the dots between people that live in the mountains, people research in the mountains, the people in the plains. And the whole idea is that we sort of need to connect the dots between us as scientists, us as community members, and at the end, sort of try to help and try to sort of echo that message to the right policymakers. Yep. I think I took quite a lot of time, but thank you very much for listening patiently. Yes.
That's the end of your presentation then.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tenzing Dai. Don't mind the time, especially to me. I found this I would like to thank you especially like for this amazing work that you're doing. It's truly inspiring actually the amount of work that has been done. And I have like so much things to say. I think that would take another hours about just to express what I felt. But thank you to let me just quickly summarize it in the sense that thank you very much for helping us understand, the definition of what cryosphere itself is, how it's formed, the system itself, and how climate change or global warming is impacting it, and then the implication behind it as well, and then what can be done in the sense like the adaptation mitigation you have mentioned, the co-production kind of way to tackle these issues, challenging issues, especially in such a tough and complex terrain. And I also love the ice stupa project. I know that you also worked on Save Our Snow project through easy mode. So a lot of work that you have done and a lot of work that you have presented. Absolutely fantastic. I hope the audience felt the same as well. Uh, so with that, because we are a little bit away in time, let me quickly go into the Q&A session. I think you have answered like most of the questions as well, but we have some few here. So one is from Bikesh Yadav. So I'll just read out. So he says, quite an interesting subject, and it really shows how serious matter it is. Despite projection data and existing study, Tenzing Ji, I would love to hear your personal, from your positional viewpoint, like what local people and Nepal government should take major action to prevent from getting warmer by human action activities despite natural phenomena. So maybe you have like a quick response to that.
I think I sort of already answered it, right?
Yeah.
That at the local point, we do not have direct sort of, but we like the whole idea is to minimize the risk, right? If you know there is a flood coming to your path, then you don't make a house there or something like that, at least to inform the people. And in case of the government, at least they should sort of prioritize disaster response and informed and evidence-based decision making. So that should be important. And I hope and that's getting better. So in case of our government, it's sort of starting to get a good momentum in disaster risk response and early warning systems. So yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of those questions, I think you have somewhat answered them, but let me go through them as well. So Ashish has written that, are we planning our water resources based on past climate condition, or are we preparing for the future reality of a changing cryosphere?
Yeah, that is also my question. I don't know. Yeah.
True.
So the as a scientist, our work is to state the problem, right? This is happening. And like I said, we need to connect the dots with the policymakers because that is where the actual action happens in case of the question you're answering. And so I am also not sure, are the policymakers actually taking scientists seriously? And the evidences that we present are not just reports in the back of their cabinets, or it's actually being heard. That is also my question. So
Absolutely. I mean, science to communication has always been like bridging that gap has always been a challenge. And another question is, let me just summarize what Imran has said. As an individual, what is our responsibility? That's his question. I think that has also partly been answered in your, but maybe you want to add to that if you have any.
I think as an individual, it's also that because every individual has a different perspective, different context. Like if you come from the hills, you will have different perspective and a different way you will understand and you'll be impacted by climate change. And people, usually local people, businessmen, others people will only understand things to their context. A businessman will only understand to their context. A farmer will only understand. So if we can contextualize the message, and as an individual, it's very important to sort of go through that context to communicate. And the best people that hear is through word of mouth, through community. So that's how people sort of actually perceive and get information like, okay, I trust that, right? And I feel that in our responsibility as a young scientists, as young early career researchers, would be to at least try to communicate what's happening from the science perspective and also from a people perspective, because there is also this big disconnect between physical scientists and local people, because physical scientists are very much sort of in their own world of research questions, but sometimes those research questions are not relevant to the local people. So maybe I think as individuals who are working in science, that could be one of our responsibility. And so in case of, I'll get a bit more. So in case of some cases that there are many scientists that don't want to communicate and don't feel like local people want to listen. But I feel as a scientist, it is our responsibility to make people understand what we want them to do or what we want them to understand. Otherwise, we might have failed in that aspect. And I think we should work towards that, to communicate what we need to do and what we have done there.
Absolutely, I fully agree. And I think citizen science, I see like good thing is that I see citizen science is rising. Like a lot of people are now interested in, co-production and long-term implementation beyond the project's life cycle. And there's another questions from Bishwadeep, and I'll just summarize it. He says, how can we systematically scale this dual purpose model of growth risk reduction and clean energy generation to other high risk lakes? And also, like, what are the institutional and financial barrier to such strategies for Nepal's broader energy and disaster resilience goals?
Yeah, that I think in Lanka they have tried and it sort of worked, but it's also not such an easy task. And especially if you look at glacial lakes, they lie at least above 4,000 to 5,000 meter above sea level. And if you look at Nepal, where in that elevation we do not have access to road, and then things get exponentially quite high. And yeah, of course, if you have a dual purpose sort of where we sort of minimize the risk and we get some gain as well, that is perfectly useful. And in case of Nepal, I think so. I give you an example of at least some municipalities that if you are a politician, so a local leader, you would rather invest in a bridge or in a on a view tower or in a sort of a school, because those are direct tangible outputs that you can sell for your next election. Why would you invest in something that is high up in the mountains and it might or might not outburst, and even if within your tenure it never outbursts, then it's like wasted money. So then there is a lot of probabilities that doesn't sit well with politicians or maybe financial sort of investors. So I might feel there is some barrier there. So maybe that could also be one of the reasons.
Rightly said. I think, yeah, we have a lot of questions popping up as well. Maybe I'll take a couple of those. So we have one from Bikram. I'll take this one. He says that what kind of remote sensing data set can we rely on for monitoring this glacier study for an early career researcher like me? So maybe I'll just add to this question. The one that I also have is that we have like you have seen that majority of our participants are early career researchers. So how do you see, like, how can we make these early career researchers more involved, especially with glaciology or cryosphere? What are the ways that we can bring more people into it? How do you see this?
Um, I think it depends on the personal motivation, right? And but in case of like if you want to learn more about Cryosphere, I think right now you have a lot of online resources, but also there's a lot of opportunity to have online trainings and others. And of course, you can apply to other courses that you can find available. Um, yeah, so that's what I think in that perspective. But it's basically like in any case of Cryosphere, hydrosphere, or any sort of applied science, is always based on a bit of a motivation side, personal motive, because they are not the default field that everybody wants to go to, like doctors or, but it's always sort of has to have some sort of passion driven behind it. Otherwise, there will always be a lot of ups and downs. Regarding your data set on monitoring glaciers, I think it depends on the scale of what you want to do. If you want to look at larger scale, like regional scale or global scale, then of course you need larger data sets that, like even Grace has it. And if you want to look at just looking at glacier retreat or glacier thickness change, then that you need digital elevation models, so that you have global digital elevation models, but you also can make digital elevation models from stereopure images. You can buy digital elevation from Pleiades or also from other sort of commercial satellites or from Planet. So that's what one thing you can do. That's primarily what people do in geodetic mass balances. But if you want to look at how glaciers have retreated, then there are a lot of freely available optical satellites like Landsat, Sentinel, even higher resolutions like Planet, and also you have active-based remote sensing like SAR, and you have other sort of you have a lot of tools nowadays. And if you just look through, and I think it depends on what you want to see. Right? If you want to see on a very specific glacier level scale, then some of these data sets may not be useful because their resolution may be quite coarse. So based on that, I think you need to have a sort of an analysis of that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tenzing Dai, for this quick responses. And there are a lot of questions popping up, but we to all the participants, I'm very sorry if we could not take some of the address like questions to address the questions that you had. Anyway, hope we will continue this discussion beyond the webinar as well. You can reach out to Tenzing Dai himself. You can find information on him, and then maybe take up this discussion if you want. And with that, we come to the closing of the webinar. I would also like to request our participants to keep their videos on as well, so that we can take a lovely group pictures sometime. But before I officially close the webinar, let me go to another poll just to reflect on what we had. So if the participants can quickly answer this poll in another 30 seconds, and then we go into closing. All right, so I end the poll here, and so here's the result. So I'm very glad to know that almost 75% of those who has participated has said that the webinar met your expectation. And we will also share a feedback form with the people who has joined here, so that we can follow up on what we could do better next time as well. With that, I come to the closing now. And there are a lot of people I want to thank here. Especially first, I want to thank Tenzing Dai here, who has joined us today. And thank you so much for this amazing, very insightful and informative presentation that you shared with us. I think it helped me develop my a lot of knowledge, make me more aware about the glacier and how it's changing and the implication behind it. And I hope it felt the same to our participants as well. I also like to thank our participants for staying with us until now and actively interacting in this Q&A session. Thank you so much for that as well. And it's unfortunate we could not take all of these questions, but hey, the discussion can go on. And lastly, but not the least, I would like to thank the YWP Nepal members. Especially, there are a lot of people involved, but I would like to name a few like Sabi, Roshanji, Ruchi, Prasant, our new colleagues of the steering committee. Thank you very, very much for building, like, the development behind this webinar itself was quite intense, and it was built in a very short period. So thank you all very much for your effort. I would like to also I mean, there are others on the background as well. So thank you to them as well for your insights and comments to improve this webinar. With that, I end the webinar here. Thank you all, and bye-bye.